As I mentioned, we are here at Alexa Find Me a Print Shop, and we are honored to welcome Bradley Metrock, who is the CEO of the Nashville-based Score Publishing. Alexa's going off in my other room. He's the host of the #1 tech podcast, This Week in Voice. He is the executive producer of Digital Book World, which I've attended, and Project Voice, which is another event, which is the #1 event for voice tech and art AI in America. He is the author of More Than Just Weather and Music, 200 Ways to Use Alexa, and so much more. You can learn all about Bradley at scorepublishing.us and about the upcoming Project Voice conference in Nashville, April 12th through 14th next year at projectvoice.ai. And by the way, we'll provide all this information to everybody, but Bradley, thank you so much for joining us today. Really honored to have you at our conference. We're so used to going to your conference.
Deborah, it's an honor. Yeah, thank you and Karis and Morton as well for what he does. And thank you for having me. I didn't ask you to read all that. You didn't need to do that. I appreciate you doing that. And scorepublishing.us, we're actually updating that today. But I appreciate being here. And there's increasingly more intersection to the world of voice and AI and every other industry, every other vertical, every other sector. Print is no different. You know, in the broadest terms, whatever you're doing with printing, it doesn't matter. It's COVID, because there's a difference. And then at the end, arrive at some actionable things that people who are involved in the print industry can be aware of and pay attention to and do. That'll help their business, and then we'll open it up for questions. So that's what I'm here for. And I'm following those great videos you got, so I got to step it up from my usual boring self. So I'll take the challenge.
You've got the thunder voice. I'll put it to you that way. So just so we're clear and laying a really 30,000-foot groundwork for everybody here about what voice technology is, think of Alexa, think of Siri, think of OK Google, and all those other voice prompts that you everything's going off in my house that you might be using to speak to things instead of touch them. There's a wealth of voice technology out there, and really so much more coming. Karis?
Yes, there is, and I think there's a lot more than both of us knew when we attended Project Voice in Chattanooga in January 2020, if you can believe that was when it was.
Long time ago.
We celebrated my birthday there, and I feel like I've aged about 20 years since then. So,
but you don't look a day over 25, Karis.
Oh, stop! Thank you. And I think we recorded podcasts from the Printerverse episodes each day, and I think those are worth everyone listening to, because it might be the same kind of approach that some people that aren't familiar with the technology are having in this presentation, because it's just us going, wow, I can't believe all the applications and all the things that we've seen today, coming at it from a fresh perspective. So it was a really, really fantastic event.
Well, I appreciate that.
We absolutely still talk about it and refer back to a lot of things in regard to just learning that these artificial devices are sexually harassed was a crazy thing to learn and that's for another session, but that's insane. But for right now, Karis and I will go off screen, and I'm going to turn on the slides for you so you can get going. And again, just thank you so much for your time and effort here.
Yes.
Yeah, appreciate both of y'all, and happy to do it, and always honored to be part of the stuff that y'all do. And so we'll kick this thing off. Welcome to Elevate Print. I'm Bradley Metrock. I'm CEO of Score Publishing, based in Nashville, Tennessee. We're not a normal publisher at all, as you're about to see. A lot of what we do centers in the universe of voice technology and AI. And the whole premise of this presentation is essentially that in order to best support your business, whatever you're doing in print, you got to you got to know what's going on, and you got to know what's coming, and all the pandemic has done is accelerated. And so that's what we're going to talk about, and then take some questions. So I host a show called This Week in Voice. It's become quite popular. This is probably the most prominent guest we've had, Mark Cuban. We've had a who's who of Amazon, Google, the big company, the big tech, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Samsung, a lot of pioneers and startup founders and academics. It's been good. And this article I wrote for Harvard Business Review, I'm going to leave this up for a minute, and you'll get the proceedings, I think, of my talk anyway. But this would not be a bad thing for anybody in this audience to read. There's a lot of eye-opening examples here that you find interesting. Your company needs a strategy for voice technology. Never has that been more true than it is right now amidst COVID, and as we're starting to see little glimpses of perhaps light at the end of the tunnel of that. Project Voice, #1 event for voice tech and AI in America. This is in Chattanooga. We moved this back to April. One of the complaints we've had over the years about, Chattanooga's a beautiful place, but we used to have this in January. April is a much more beautiful time there. And so we moved it. The companies I mentioned, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Samsung, were all presenting sponsors of this last year, in addition to companies like Mayo Clinic, NPR, and many others. And we were fortunate to have both Deborah and Karis be part of this with us, and hopefully we'll continue to do that. This Week in Voice VIP, this is a daily letter to those working with voice tech and AI, conversational AI, as it says there, but often we talk about AI in broader terms, machine learning. This is on Substack. If you were to Google This Week in Voice VIP, you would find this. It's a Substack newsletter, which I write, that's gotten to be popular. So anyway, I do a bunch of stuff with voice and AI. I think I made the point. So now, I'll get into the meat of it here. So the term voice first, that's a term we use a bunch. I want to talk about what it means. On the left, you see some imagery of mother's womb and a baby. And the concept here is that when we're born, and even before we're born, all we have is our mother's voice. And then the picture in the middle, the child, we develop an inner voice soon after that will guide us for the rest of our life. And so it always stood to reason that if you look at the technology on the right, it always stood to reason that technology would arc toward being voice-driven, voice-oriented, what we call voice first. And that's a major premise of what's going on. It's accelerated. We were already seeing it before the pandemic. We're seeing it even more accelerated now because people are thinking about wanting to have things like touchless elevators and touchless experiences of different kinds. And we're interested in a more hygienic world now. And voice has a role to play with that. But even before all of this movement was well underway. So what you're looking at here is a graph from a well-known website called voicebot.ai for people working in this space. I'll say that again, voicebot.ai. Really good news and commentary website if you're interested in this stuff. The graph below at the bottom is the market share of smart speakers in the United States in 2019. You can see that Amazon in excess of 60%, Google about 24%, and then other making up the rest. And then 1 year later, Amazon and Google have basically swapped 7-8%. Zero sum wise, what one took away came directly from the other, which is a sign of a duopoly, which is exactly what we've got. And the takeaway here is that Amazon and Google, leading into 2019, 2017, 2018, 2019, Amazon was dominant, with Alexa, and pretty much stood alone. Now they're still dominant, but Google has risen up to challenge them. And I think it's an important thing to take away, no matter what it is you're doing, that the expectation for voice technology and AI, mainstream AI in America, will center around these two companies for some time. Yeah, Apple's doing some things to catch up. Samsung Bixby has made some moves, but Amazon and Google are the two technologies that you need to be most aware of, regardless of what you're doing. So I'm going to rattle through a number of early successes for voice technology. This is one of the most popular things people like me to talk about. And this is really important because while some of these things will get you thinking about things that will help you in your business, all these things come from all different industries and different sectors. The purpose here is to paint you a picture and illustrate the core concept of this talk, which is that voice and AI are here. And just because, you decide to only ask, hey, Google, I shouldn't say that. I'm probably activating people's speakers, but, just because you're asking your voice assistant to play music or for the weather, doesn't mean that a whole lot of other things are going on that eventually will continue to bubble up to the surface. And I want to talk about some of those things. Novel effect. So what this company is, this was the very first company to be funded by the joint venture between Amazon and Techstars called the Alexa Accelerator. And they then went on Shark Tank, got a $500,000 offer from, I don't think it was Cuban, I think it was somebody else. They turned it down and then it went on to raise, I think, somewhere around $4 million after the show was over. So really interesting. And what these folks do is they've created voice technology and implemented voice technology into a pre-existing mobile application. And the way, what it does is if I'm reading a book to our 8-year-old son, let's say I'm reading Cat in the Hat. He's a little past that, but still, those were good days. And Novel Effect will hear me reading Cat in the Hat to him, and it will realize I'm in chapter 4. I'm not in chapter 1, just because I just started the app a minute ago. I'm in chapter 4. And so it will sync up this audio soundscape that they've recorded actually in Music Row in Nashville. This rich tapestry of music and audio will then correspond to the live reading from me to my son. And this sounds like a gimmick until you find out what the company found out, which is that when you use this technology, reading comprehension explodes. And so there's a lot of educational value to this. There's things they're doing with corporate learning and some interesting things going on there. Really interesting stuff. Stephen King Library. So this is a partnership between Simon & Schuster, one of the biggest publishers in the United States, and an agency out of New York City called Skilled Creative. And what this Alexa skill, so Alexa skill is just Amazon's nomenclature for an app on Alexa. We call that an Alexa skill. The corollary for Google is a Google action. So an app with a Google Assistant, Google's voice assistant is a Google action. So Alexa skill, Google action. So Stephen King Library is both an Alexa skill and a Google action that will take in information from you on if you've read a Stephen King book lately, and it will ask you some sort of random questions that have nothing to do with seemingly almost anything. And it will then produce a list of books from among the 50 plus books that Stephen King has written that you would be that the AI believes you would be interested in. And this is kind of eye-opening. This is one of the, certainly within the publishing sector, a glimpse of what's to come. AIs, voice assistants, random entities associated with our computer telling us based on our context and information we provided, or else information that we've allowed these things to have access to, things we might like. It's going to be transformative. It's well worth talking about here. Alexa, what am I holding? So if you have an Echo Show, an Echo Spot, I think is the one with the circular, with the alarm clock. If you have an Alexa device that has a front-facing camera, you can, the Echo Show being the main one, you can go up to it and you can say, Alexa, what am I holding? So if I have, let me just look around. If I have a consumer product, or if I have an album of some sort, my Alexa's going off as well. If I have something that's sold on Amazon, then if you ask the Echo Show, Alexa, what am I holding? You will get information about the product. And then it will ask you, do you want to order that? If it's not something that has a barcode, and it's just some, something random, then it will attempt to use machine learning to analyze what that is, and then tell you what you're holding up. This also sounds like a gimmick. This will become a trend. Things that sound like a gimmick quickly become essential. It sounds like a gimmick, but until you realize that people with low vision and no vision, for them, this is absolutely transformative. I know my grandmother in her old age, she's deceased, but, she would have, she had macular degeneration. She absolutely would have relied on a device that did something like this. And the ordering capability on top of it. Yeah, you're ordering from Amazon. Some people like that, some people don't. But the fact that you can use a device to help you in that way is for many people is essential and transformative. Alexa Guard. So what this is functionality built into Amazon's voice assistant, which I guess I'll refer to it now since my own are going off. That will allow you to use your smart speakers and set them up to where they will then listen, not for you to say a wake word that will then wake them up and you ask them a question. No, they'll be listening for sound. They'll be listening for glass breaking. They'll be listening for loud disruptions. They'll be listening for a lot of different things. And you can then, if it hears one of these things happen, you can tell it what to do, whether to call you, text you, call the authorities, whatever. It's a home security feature is what it is. And it's having a lot of implications for insurance. You're seeing functionality like this, and then things that go even further, not that what Amazon's doing, but some other companies, some startups in the space where there's technology coming out that very applicable for senior citizens aging in place, but for many other types of folks too, where it will listen to your home or your office, and it will establish baseline audio for your premises. So it will deduce over listening to me and my family for a few days that the refrigerator in the kitchen opens up 2.8 times a day. I'm just making up numbers, obviously. The bathroom, you hear the bathroom a certain number of times a day, hearing activity from 6:30 a.m. on average to 9:52 p.m. And it'll establish this sort of baseline context. And then if you get out of that, it will then ping you. So if that's your norm, if there's a woman living at home and that's her norm, and then you don't hear anything for 24 hours, you hear nothing. You hear no bathroom, no refrigerator, no front door, no phone. You best believe that will be pinging somebody and alerting them. And very useful, very important thing to know. Google Recorder. This is technology built into Google devices and Google Assistant that allows transcription and translation of audio, transcription being the main thing. They're integrating translation now, with the key being no cloud. So no internet access, everything offline, the ability to transcribe and translate in real time audio. It's very useful for a number of different sectors. But one thing to keep in mind is just the equity of internet. Not everybody has internet. And for those who do have internet, there's a wide disparity of who has what. And it will become increasingly important as voice and AI integrates into more aspects of our lives, that it is capable of functioning well without internet, and that's what's going on there. Smart speakers in college freshmen and senior citizens. So what this is about is, it's funny. We live in the so-called information age, and we have more disinformation than I think we've ever had in the history of mankind. But the fact is that all of our exposure to technology causes us to be depressed. We live as human beings more depressed, more isolated, and more lonely lives than we've ever before, according to many historians and people who study this sort of thing. Despite that, there's two types of people that get more lonely, more isolated, and more depressed than everybody else. Those are, and you can guess from the slide, college freshmen and senior citizens. Now, these two groups of people have a lot in common. They're both embracing new environments. They're both, pre-COVID, some amidst COVID. But, that's a separate subject. But these two groups of folks, they're in a different world. They're meeting different people. They have minimal exposure to family. Some have none. They're learning an entirely different way of doing things, entirely different community, so on and so on and so on. And the causality of it is not 100% known. But the correlation, the fact that something magical takes place is very known. And it's been demonstrated over and over again that if you simply insert a smart speaker, your Echo, your Google Hub, Apple HomePod, whatever it is, you insert a smart speaker into the college dorm room of a college freshman, or the room in a nursing home of a senior citizen, or even if they're living at home, just in their kitchen or in their abode, magical things start to take place. For college freshmen, they become more participatory in their environment. They attend class more. They make better grades. And importantly, they kill themselves less. And they drop out less as well. We've already seen all of that in study after study after study. Senior citizens, all the same thing. They're more participatory in the world around them. They have better adherence to their drug regimens, and they have better health outcomes no matter what it is they're doing, and they live longer. It's profound stuff going on, and it's important to know. It might be the most important bullet point on the slide. Speech pathology, Project Understood. Project Understood is the joint venture between Google and the Canadian Down Syndrome Society. These voice assistants and smart speakers do not understand people who have Down syndrome very well. They understand someone like me who can speak relatively clearly about 19 out of 20 words. It's about what it is. It's more than that now. It's about 39 out of 40 words. It's about 98% is about what it is. And it's increasing steadily. For people with Down syndrome, it's only about 60%. And for some, it's even less than that. So basically, it's missing 1 out of 3 words that someone with Down syndrome says. And for those folks, it's extremely frustrating. It's demoralizing. It's dehumanizing. And so what Project Understood is, it is the joint venture, like I said, between Google and the Canadian Down Syndrome Society, to where people who have Down syndrome can participate in this machine learning process where they read a bunch of sentences, and then Google ingests that information, and Google Assistant, as a result, has become better and better and better at understanding people with Down syndrome than it otherwise would have been. It's really, really cool. The final thing here is Canary Speech and Carnegie Mellon University. So it is important for you and your business to understand that voice is far beyond the words coming out of somebody's mouth. Canary Speech is an entire business, a hot startup raising a bunch of money, where they can listen to the sound of your voice, and no matter what words you're saying, and based on a number of algorithms and data that they have, they can diagnose or pre-diagnose or give you some probability that you have all sorts of diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. There's several, and it's just from hearing your voice. That's it. It's crazy. It would blow your mind. Carnegie Mellon made news at the beginning of the year because they figured out that people who have had COVID recently or currently have it, it wrecks your vocal cords, and it impacts your vocal cords to such a degree that they can diagnose COVID or get real close on the basis of your voice alone. And it wasn't FDA approved or anything like that, and they're continuing to work on it, but it's very advanced and very profound. So all of that hopefully paints a picture for you of what's going on in this landscape. And this brings us to how voice and AI impact the printerverse, which is Deborah's term and Karis's term, which I love that term. And I want to talk about this a minute and give you some halfway actionable stuff to at least be thinking about for you and your business. 41% of adults use voice search at least once per day, most on mobile. I don't know. That stat seems low. That stat was toward the end of last year. That has probably risen quite a bit. And thinking through the concept of when you have a voice assistant that you trust, a lot of people don't trust different companies for different reasons, and that's fine. But if you have a voice assistant that you trust from a company that you trust, you're going to be asking that thing a bunch of questions, and it's going to certainly replace some of any Google searches you might do. And that is exactly the touch point where it hits your business. No matter what it is you're doing, if you have a print shop, if you have a chain of print shops, if you're doing direct to mail, print marketing, whatever it is you're doing, however, knowing your customer journey and how people find out about your business, how people engage with you, realizing less and less and less and less and less people are going to be going to Google, doing anything related to SEO. Less people are going to be going to the web, looking at your website. More and more of that traffic is going to become voice. It lived within these voice assistants, and whatever it tells them when they ask, hey, Amazon's voice assistant, who shall not be named, tell me a print shop near me. I need to print something. Tell me a company that can print me 3,000 flyers and get them out in 2 weeks. Tell me a company from amongst these zip codes that has a good reputation. Whatever way I decide to phrase the question is what the voice assistant will then have to respond to. Are you going to be included in that or not? And the way these ecosystems are so young that you don't have as much control over it as you do over the web, but that will change. And what I can tell you now is that it's helpful to every business. Every business I talk to, it doesn't matter what sector or industry, I tell them, look, Amazon has got free tools called Alexa Skills Blueprints, is what it's called. You can Google that, Alexa Skills Blueprints. where you can create a Alexa skill, which again is just an app for the Alexa ecosystem, at no cost. And it's very I hesitate to call something intuitive, but it's way easier than creating a website. It's way, you don't have to know any code. All you have to do is pull this up and just start answering some questions and filling some things in. And it's not hard for many people, most folks, especially who are business owners, to create an Alexa skill for their business. And what that does a number of things if you do that. It allows you to learn and think through the type of things that people might want to know about your business from a conversational standpoint. And it gets you into the ecosystem. Because what I tell people is, look, how Amazon and Google decide to present your business, you may have some qualms about that, but they won't be presenting your business at all if you're not even in the ecosystem. So you see the bullet point there, importance of auditing and experimentation. The experimentation part is using something like Alexa Skills Blueprints to create something and just get your feet wet. Auditing means going to Alexa, Google Assistant, Siri, Bixby, any of these voice assistants and saying, hey, what is the printerverse? What would happen if I asked the voice assistants, what is the printerverse? I don't have a clue. It would be helpful to know, for whatever your business name is, what these voice assistants say, because it might say, I don't know. It might steer you to the web. Or, as we found out many times, it may steer you to something completely different. Like when there was a business that had, it doesn't matter what the business was, but when they asked, hey, I think it was Google, hey, Google, what is my business? Tell me about this business. It then sent them to a conference about selling guns, and they didn't want that. So, and it just because it had a similar name. Auditing is an important thing to do now and in the future. That's why it's on the slide. Authentication and security. The other thing to think about here is that voice, this is really pandemic related. We had seen some steps in this direction before COVID, but now it's really off to the races, the concept of voice commerce and voice payment. Because on the retail side, you have less and less people that want to come into a retail establishment. Retail establishments, like clothing stores, won't even let you try stuff on. So a lot of that, those consumer touch points are pushed out into the home, and they're digital now. And so voice and AI, these smart speakers and voice assistants will continue to have a much greater role as we head into 2020 and beginning of 2021 on the payment side. And you're going to see, in order for me to say, hey, Google, pay the print shop down the road, the $500 bill for the print job, it has to know my voice. All the mainstream voice assistants can do that already. But then there's other authentication and security you're going to see from, as a business owner or anybody doing anything, you need to keep an eye on that because it's going to impact you. The final thing I want to mention here is the concept of interacting with data through voice. And this is a cool one. And we're seeing a lot of companies, some heavily funded, some bootstrapped startups. Amazon and Google really haven't gotten into this yet, though they will. So to interact with data, whatever data you're accumulating with your business, a lot of times you certainly need to know Excel, but sometimes you need to know things like SQL. You need to have knowledge that's fairly technical in nature. And all of that's about to completely change. You'll be able to ask a number of different voice assistants, tell me where I am sales-wise year over year to last year. Tell me if that sale goes through next week with that client we talked to this morning, what the shortfall will still be August 2020 versus August 2019 and August 2018. Tell me if we have tell me if we have the money to hire a new marketing person. Tell me if we have the money to not fire the marketing person. You know, all sorts of conversational questions related to data and the data that a business would have that you might ask a financial analyst working for you or your CFO. All of that's about to be doable with no technical expertise whatsoever through voice. And this is another thing I'm keeping my eye on. There's some hot companies in this space. I don't need to go into them here. It doesn't matter. But that's another trend to keep an eye on as well. That'll certainly impact anybody doing anything with print. So that brings me to the end, and I'm happy to answer any questions you got. My email is here. I always provide that. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to follow up with me there. My Twitter is there. I'll warn you about following me there. I tweet about all sorts of stuff that has nothing to do with anything. But if you have low expectations, you're welcome to pursue that too. Deborah and Karis, thank you for having me join you.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to stop sharing your slides. Karis, go ahead while I load this, fix this.
Yeah, just thank you so much, Bradley. It was, you know, it's so easy for us to see the possibilities, you know, the way you explain it. And it was the same with Project Voice. It's maybe a technology that people aren't that familiar with, you know, in business terms, but we all know, you know, what Alexa is. We all know the basics, so we can all kind of envision the things that you're saying. So thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. And one of the things Deborah and I said in one of our podcasts after the event was, you know, that the print industry really needs to sit up and take notice of this technology because of, you know, where we're going to be before long in terms of its growth. So hopefully everybody listening has got some food for thought there. And in terms of questions, I don't know if Deborah, you want to, is there, we've got a couple of questions.
Yeah,
I think
we have
Q&A.
Yeah, we have a question from Roger Buck. Hey, Roger. He wants to know, in regard to security and authentication, what is happening in the voice space for security? Is this going to be the new fingerprint or eye scan?
Yeah, it is. And especially, it's going to be part of it. It's not going to be the whole thing. So basically, there's a premise within those circles of people thinking about security and authentication that one touch point is not sufficient. You need two. So whether that's what I mean by that is, yes, you hear my voice. Yes, within a 99.7% confidence interval, it's me. But we're still going to send you a text to your mobile, and we're going to 99.7% is unacceptable when we could have 100% just by sending you a text. You know, Face ID, that's been part of it. Now the thing that's shifting a little bit is that with all these people wearing masks, you know, that's thrown it for a loop. I guess I'll say that with all of the unrest going on within the United States, there have been conversations about technology being used in a negative way against people who are expressing themselves. And it's the same technology that people want to use to do contact tracing is precisely what they will use to figure out who is saying and doing things that they don't like and will stop them. So, you know, there's a very interesting conversation going on in that realm, but voice will have a role to play with security and authentication moving forward. You can expect it not to be the whole thing, even though it works well enough to be the whole thing for the reasons I just laid out. And for, you know, for any sort of business, the commercial solutions that will be provided for you to take advantage of this stuff, it'll just be, it's already starting to explode, and it'll get integrated into whatever it is you're doing. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
I have a question, actually, if it's okay.
Yes, please.
I was just wondering, because I find your presentation really interesting, but as being a non-English native speaker, I don't use the voice services so much because every time I use them, I have to, especially if I try to do it in Danish, obviously it's even more limited. But even when I try to use it in English, I always have to kind of proofread before I send a message. And I was just wondering the implications if you start using voice services for professional applications that can eventually have a huge impact on, let's say, machinery or production data. What is your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so that's why that's one of a few reasons why you're seeing the rise of voice assistants that are more niche in nature, because the way you get around some of the problems that still remain with speech recognition. Speech recognition has come a tremendous amount of distance over the last 20 to 30 years. But there's challenges. You just expressed some. One big one that people are working on is that for families that speak 2 languages or perhaps more in the home, having a voice assistant, you start switching between languages. I mean, I have several friends who will do this. They will start talking in one language, they'll finish the sentence in a different language. And if you do stuff like that, you really are not going to be understood by most of these voice assistants. And so there's challenges that remain. And so the strategy from some of these companies has been, we're going to narrow the focus down, and we're going to limit the amount of surface area to the diction and the language of a particular industry, whether it's Wall Street, whether it's healthcare, whether it's publishing, whether it's hospitality, whether it's print. And that jargon that you use, if we know that we don't have to be listening for healthcare terms and hospitality terms, and we can just listen to print terms for you, it works way better, even if you do have something with an accent going on, or other sorts of things going on. So that's the approach that's been taken for now, until the technology continues to improve.
Maybe you will end up like me and my wife when we have to talk about something, between adults, and we don't want the kids to understand that we speak German, right? So maybe you have like a language that is not understood by, by like voice recognition, right?
That's a good idea. Bradley, I just want to kind of tying in with that a bit in terms of using it for business, but having it kind of tailored and a bit more specific. I think most of us know, most of our experiences with Alexa or any other assistant is to, maybe say check the weather. I mean, you wrote the book on the many more things you can do than that. But if we were to say we'd be checking the weather in the morning and then checking your kind of overnight production performance of your print shop or the status of your project if you're a print customer, either on the same assistant or a kind of an enterprise assistant. Are we seeing that becoming kind of more prevalent? Is that kind of on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, the way all that's going to work is no one's going to expect you to stand still next to your smart speaker while it enlightens you on the day's sales, or your uptake on your marketing collateral that just came in or whatever. The smart speaker, it's a totally separate conversation, that the smart speaker is going to be with us for a period of time, and then it will go away. And because it's going to go away, because it's going to be embedded, the voice technology will be embedded into everything around us. And yeah, that if that sounds like a privacy concern, it is. But that's something that we have to stay vigilant on. But the fact is that the functionality and the utility that can be derived for most people from this sort of thing will be worth some of those trade-offs. And so, the question you're asking, Karis, about, at the end of the day, your voice assistant giving you some information, some summary data. The way that is being implemented now, some of the stuff I'm seeing is it will say, do you want me to send your summary report to your phone? do you want me to email you the summary report for the day? It may, give you, it doesn't do this now, but soon it will, it may give you, if there's some outlier, that you may want to know about right now, it may tell you that if you can do it quickly, because speed is a real factor with these voice assistants. They know that if they start rattling off a bunch of stuff, they're going to lose you. And especially amidst the pandemic, they're really going to lose you because everybody's attention span is so non-existent / lower, whatever word you want to use, because it's information overload, as well as we're in our homes and there's things going on that we're not used to dealing with in the workday, and so on and so on. So if the voice assistant starts rattling off a bunch of stuff, no, I'm not having that. So it's going to, you take advantage of your other technology and give you things in the way that you're comfortable with receiving them. And that's what you can expect.
I actually have a question. If everybody here hopefully will, after this session, go to everything that talks to them and is hooked up to an internet and ask, where is my business, or something about locate my business, or what is the name of my business. If they don't like what they hear, how do they affect that to be the results that they want? And I also just want to refer everybody, Karis and I did a podcast with Philip Warbass, who and about SEO for print shops on the devices. But I want you, so people can get a more in-depth answer from him, but I would love for you to address this, please.
Sure. So in order to illustrate this, I'll give you a very brief story. So one of the things we reported on with This Week in Voice, one of the previous seasons of the shows. So the format of my podcast and my show is that we'll take the top stories of the week and then talk about them with a panel of folks working in the space with technology. And one of the stories one time was, it was like Christmas a couple of years ago. Somebody, and it was someone in Nashville who I've actually met before, believe it or not, decided to ask Alexa, Amazon's voice assistant, who is Jesus Christ? And they didn't like the answer. And they got real mad about it and started to raise a controversy about it. Amazon went right into the lab, I'm talking within days, and changed the answer. And the world went on about its business. A few months later, somebody else asked Amazon's voice assistant, who is Hillary Clinton? And didn't like the answer. I forget what exactly it said there, but didn't like the answer one bit. Raised a stink about it. What did Amazon do? They marched themselves right into the lab and they fixed it and they made it different and the world moved on. The point here is that these companies know that there's going to be stuff that pops up on a regular basis that needs to be fixed and tweaked and adjusted. So that infrastructure is there. So with that said, if you find something with your business that is, if it's not exactly what you want, then you can still do this. But if it's very unsavory for whatever reason, then you can definitely do this. Amazon and Google both have a number of folks with evangelist in their title. And these are people who have the job of making sure that there is not this negative PR backlash from things. And these people don't take the risk that, hey, you're a print shop in Des Moines, Iowa, like you're not big enough to care about. Oh, no, because they've seen that things that look small don't stay small. So if you reach out to them and you say, look, I discovered this with your voice assistant and I need to get this fixed, or have a conversation with somebody to get this fixed, the response rate, in my experience, to that emails like that coming in cold has been very high. And if it's not, you're welcome to reach out to me because I know all these people myself, and I'm happy to help you. But that is the as cumbersome as that may be. That's the steps for that. I mean, you're welcome to fire a web form off into the void, but it's better to send an email and address that if you find something you don't like.
Bradley, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. I mean, somebody wrote, Roger Book wrote that this is the best and most interesting session he's attended this year so far. So from talking from people who have been on Zoom for the last 6 months, that's a pretty high rating, especially from Roger. Appreciate that, Roger. Appreciate your time. Karis has put Bradley's LinkedIn link in the chat, but you should definitely connect with Bradley and sign up for his newsletter. It's one of my favorite things that I get, and it comes at really odd times, so it's very prevalent in your inbox. And my favorite thing is the weekly recap of all the links. So if you can't look every day, you get a summary of everything that was discussed that week. And it's really interesting stuff in there. And the reason why this session is so important, and it's under the Elevate Print umbrella, is because printers are already behind on their websites. We know this. I mean, I'm not trying to insult anybody, but some printers don't even have responsive websites. And this is like one of those things where I know there's like a suitcase upgrade and then one that you have to upgrade by knocking down all the technology and starting again. This is going to be one of those moments, unless you kind of propel yourself forward now and start thinking about how to get your business and your opportunities and your products and your services and your Yelp reviews up and all the things online that these devices will pull from to describe, explain who you are through a voice assistant. Currently, they are not conversational. You can't have it. It needs to know information, and it is voice prompted to give you a response, but it's not a computer. It's not going to compute for you. So it's right, Bradley, it's pulling from information out there. So focusing on the things that it's going to pull from is the best thing you can do right now. Because when someone says Alexa, find me a print shop, if she doesn't know you exist, you don't exist. Final words, Brad?
I'm honored to be part of this. Deborah, Karis, thank you for inviting me. My email is open. I hope to hear from you. And and you were right on. You got to control what you can control on the web. That will help the voice presence, and experimenting with it is critical too. Thank you all for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bradley.
We're going to put on a video in between sessions, and then we're going to start up in a moment. Yes, Morton, or yeah? Yes. Thanks, everybody.